So the first book in the series is Loki, Where Mischief Lies. Second book is Gamora and Nebula, Sisters in Arms. They are part of what is going to be a trilogy, if I can get my act together, of young adult novels about anti-heroes in the Marvel Universe as teens, and sort of their origin stories in a way. And yeah, they all have kind of a little bit of a historical sensibility to them. So Loki spends about 2/3 of his book in Victorian London solving murder mysteries. And Nebula and Nebula and Gamora are on a strip-mined wasteland of a planet that is pretty directly inspired by elements of the American West. Yay.
Yay. Mackenzi, I'm so curious to talk to you about some of your writing process for this book, because for me, Unstoppable Wasp was full of like a bunch of true science facts, because that's Nadia's like a big scientist character. And so I had no problem doing any of that. I've been a science communicator before. Like that was super easy for me. And the most challenging part of writing this book for me was the action scenes. I went back and forth with the folks at Marvel several times on the action scenes because they really want these books to read the way that an MCU movie feels to watch. And that's a hard thing to do. I'm going to be straight up with you. It was the most fun part of writing my book, but it was also the most challenging. And Gamora and Nebula are obviously like a big part of their, you know, upbringing and story is about being fighters. How was it for you writing some of the epic fight scenes in this book?
Good, because I'm the opposite of you, where I was like, the less science, the better. If it's possible, that would be always my preference. How much can I make up? And I usually write historical fiction, and so this is my first like pure sci-fi. As much as it's based on like space westerns and the American West and stuff, it is a sci-fi book, and so I spent the whole writing process just like swanning around in the fact that I didn't have to spend 4 hours researching like 18th century cutlery. I was thrilled. It was like, if I run into something, make it up. Though I did end up, there's the book is, like I said, the book is set on a strip mine planet that has been sort of like eaten down to the bones by this terrible mining corporation, and they're digging these like tunnels to get to this renewable energy source that's under the surface. And I did at one point, way too late in the process, sit down with my dad, who is an engineer and a project manager for power plants, and so knows a little bit about energy and mining and things. And we sat down and we talked about like diggers and miners and how you would dig these really, really deep tunnels and things like that. Though in the end, he would tell me, he'd be like, no, it would work like this. I'd be like, yeah, I don't think it's not going to work like that. This is my planet. But yeah, the fight scenes, that's what we're talking about. I love writing the fight scenes. I really like writing action scenes, especially this one, because like you said, it's such a fundamental part of their characters, is this like assassin and warrior training and identity. I spent a lot of time watching my favorite combat scenes in different films and television. I had kind of like a YouTube playlist I created that I would go watch over and over again. And sometimes I would just like watch that video of Sebastian Stan doing his like knife flip when he's Bucky, and I think he's in like a stunt rehearsal, but he does the like flip and then he grabs it, and it's just like chills. It's great.
I want to learn how to do that so bad.
Yeah.
That, and when I was writing Loki, I did a lot of watching Tom Hiddleston just like flip those knives, which is now in the trailer for the Disney Plus show, which every time I see, I have to like go take a cold shower. As much as I am a pacifist, something about like superhero comic book characters with weaponry is a very niche corner of my sexuality. It's anyway, different conversation, different event. Yeah, so I watched a lot of fight scenes. I've like taken kickboxing for a while, and so I incorporated some of that. I did a little bit of like standing up and moving around in my living. It's hard to like map. I find actually fighting and kissing scenes to be very similar, or like sex scenes. I don't know if I can say that in a Marvel event. In that you're mapping body parts constantly. and you'll go back and read it and be like, okay, so somehow you have 3 hands in this scene because you are grabbing the gun and you're grabbing her arm and also you're throwing a punch. And you got to kind of, it's hard to track bodies in space like that, but I find it a really fun, interesting, exciting challenge. And it was especially fun in this book because they're always, whenever they're fighting, there's always lots of fun set pieces around them. So they're fighting inside of this big like dig rig that's burrowing to the center of a planet, or they're fighting, or even like outside and they're like rolling under the rig, or they're I'm trying to think of some of the others. They're fighting with like a while also trying to like detonate a bomb and stuff like that. So there were also kind of fun external factors to bring in, and I like getting kind of creative with like, how can we punch each other this time?
One of the things I really loved about the fight scenes in this book were how like Gamora and Nebula's fight styles felt so different because they're such different types of fighters, and that's such like a theme in the book. And I'd love to hear from both of you about like when building out these characters and the characterizations of these people who are so iconic and who people are already familiar with, like how much do you dive deep into the comic books or the movies or whatever other pieces of sort of Marvel history exist for these characters, and how much are you sort of building from scratch?
Well, for the Unstoppable Wasp, I was actually really lucky because Nadia is a relatively new character in the Marvel canon. I mean, when you think about characters like a Captain Marvel or a Black Widow, like there's a lot of baggage there. There's like 75 years of baggage there to dig through and kind of figure out what you want to take from that, which is cool in a way, but also very overwhelming in a way. Nadia was only introduced within the past 5 years. And she's basically only ever been written by 2 other people besides me, primarily Jeremy Whitley, who wrote her her like solo comic for 2 arcs, which are great, by the way. If you haven't had the chance to pick up the Unstoppable Wasp comics, they're so cute. They're all about girl power and like women scientists, and they're super smart. So I had a little, like, there just wasn't that much source material, so I was able to read all of it quickly, which was great, and over again. I always had the comics next to me while I was writing so that I could make sure, because like Unstoppable Wasp it's named after Nadia, but it's a very ensemble book. You know, it's all about her GIRL like research lab team and her teaming up together to use their like combined skills. The characters with more backstory in Wasp would be Bobby, Mockingbird, and like Janet Van Dyne, who was actually a founding member of the Avengers and named the Avengers, which is an interesting fact that not a lot of people know, but it's true. So they're sort of Nadia's supporting characters, but I had a little bit more research to do on them, but they don't fight really too much in the book. It was cool with Nadia because what I loved about this experience, and Mackenzi, you can probably talk about this a little bit too, but working in a novelization as opposed to in a comic book, you just have so much more time to focus on the interiority of the character. Like comics and even movies, to the action movies to a certain extent, are so focused on like kinetic movement, keeping things going, looking exciting. Like you don't get a lot of time to spend with like, and what were they thinking at that time? Like emotionally, where are they in their like journey of vulnerability? Like it's just not something that we spend a lot of time on, because comics are such a visual medium and it's all about like the action and keeping the eyes interested. Whereas with novels, you suddenly have 300 pages to be like, and what was their emotion like? And how does it feel to shrink to this big and have the whole world suddenly appear as though it's in slow motion and you are the only one who is real? And what does it feel like to run on a drop of water while you try to kick someone's butt? And like, how does it feel to be like involved in the physics of that? And what are the ramifications of that? And Nadia has bipolar disorder. So we got to write a lot of fun therapy scenes too, which is great because I think all superheroes should be in therapy. No offense, I'm in therapy. I think it's great. Yeah. They see a lot of stuff. So yeah, I don't know. It's great to be able to spend more time with the consequences of what it means, like emotionally, to be a superhero, and in our case is like a teen superhero. I could barely get up in the morning when I was 16. So like, it's a lot. It feels like it would be a lot. Or anti-hero, as the case may be.